I was planning my dream wedding when my fiancé revealed a secret that made me question everything I knew about him. The florist's hands trembled as she arranged the final centerpiece, white peonies cascading over crystal vases like snow. Perfect, I whispered, touching the delicate petals. 3 days until Daniel and I exchanged vows at the historic Riverside Chapel. 3 days until I became Mrs. Elena Vasquez Green, a name I'd practiced writing in cursive since our engagement 6 months ago. The reception hall glowed under string lights, exactly as I'd envisioned since childhood. Daniel appeared in the doorway, his broad shoulders filling the frame. Even after 2 years together, my heart still skipped when he smiled that crooked grin that had first caught my attention at the law firm where we both worked. Senior partner, Harvard law graduate, devoted son to his elderly mother. Everything about him screamed stability and success. My family adored him, especially my father, who'd never approved of my previous boyfriends. "It's beautiful, Elena," he said, but something in his voice sounded strained. Dark circles shadowed his usually bright green eyes. "Can we talk privately?" The florist gathered her supplies and left us alone in the golden light filtering through stained glass windows. I smoothed my engagement ring, the 2-carat diamond catching fragments of colored light from the windows. "What's wrong? You've been acting strange all week. Are you getting cold feet? Because if you are, we can postpone." My words died as I saw the envelope in his hand. Aged paper yellowed at the edges with my name written in unfamiliar handwriting. "This arrived at my office yesterday," Daniel said, extending the envelope toward me. His hand shook slightly, and I noticed sweat beading along his hairline despite the cool October air. "Elena, there's something I should have told you a long time ago. Something about my past that changes everything." The envelope felt heavy, weighted with more than just paper. Inside, a photograph slipped out first. Daniel, maybe 20 years younger, standing next to a woman with long black hair and hollow eyes. They were both dressed in what looked like military fatigues, but not quite right. The woman's shirt bore stains I didn't want to identify. Behind them, a concrete wall displayed graffiti in a language I couldn't read. My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter beneath the photograph. The writing was cramped, desperate. Daniel Green participated in operations that violated international law. He was present during interrogations that resulted in deaths of civilians. He helped cover up war crimes. The woman in the photo, Maria Santos, died 3 days after this picture was taken. She was 22 years old and had 2 children. The letter was signed, Colonel James Whitmore, U.S. Army Intelligence, retired. "This isn't real," I said, looking up at Daniel's ashen face. "Someone's trying to sabotage our wedding. This is fake, right? Daniel, tell me this is someone playing a sick joke." But his silence stretched between us like a chasm opening in the earth. He sank into one of the chapel chairs, burying his face in his hands. "I was deployed to a classified location for 18 months after law school. I told you I did contracting work for the government. That wasn't technically a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either." His voice came out muffled, broken. "What are you saying?" My engagement ring suddenly felt too tight, cutting off circulation to my finger. The chapel walls seemed to close in around us, the beautiful flowers now looking like funeral arrangements. Daniel looked up, and I saw tears streaming down his cheeks. "I was part of a psychological operations unit. We ran interrogations, Elena. Enhanced interrogations, they called them. I told myself I was serving my country, gathering intelligence to protect American lives. But some of the things we did..." He trailed off, staring at the photograph in my hands. "The woman in the picture," I whispered, though I dreaded the answer. "What happened to her?" My stomach churned as I studied Maria's face, the fear etched in her dark eyes, the way her hands were positioned behind her back as if bound. She was suspected of harboring insurgents. The intelligence was bad, Elena. She was just a teacher trying to protect her students. By the time we realized the mistake, it was too late. She died from complications of the interrogation. Internal bleeding. Daniel's voice broke completely on the last words. I staggered backward, the envelope and photograph fluttering to the ground. "You killed an innocent woman." The words tasted like poison in my mouth. "You tortured someone to death and then came home and built a career defending clients in civil courts?" "Elena, please." I was young, following orders. I didn't know. Daniel reached for me, but I jerked away from his touch. "Don't." My voice came out sharp enough to cut glass. "Don't you dare try to justify this. You tortured people. You covered up murders. And you never told me." I thought about all our conversations about justice, about protecting the innocent. How many times had he quoted legal ethics to me while hiding this monstrosity? "I wanted to tell you," Daniel said desperately, "but I couldn't risk losing you. I love you, Elena. What I did overseas, that's not who I am anymore. I've spent the last 5 years trying to make amends, taking pro bono cases for refugees, donating to veterans' mental health organizations, buying your way out of guilt." I picked up the photograph again, staring at Maria's face. 22 years old with 2 children who would never see their mother again. How many others were there? How many people did you torture? How many died? Daniel's silence answered my question more completely than words could have. I felt bile rise in my throat as the magnitude of his deception crashed over me. This man I'd planned to spend my life with, who I'd introduced to my family, who I'd trusted with my future, was a war criminal. "Elena, we can work through this. I'm seeing a therapist. I've been in treatment for PTSD since I came back. The nightmares, the panic attacks. I'm getting help. We can postpone the wedding, do couples counseling, whatever you need." His voice took on a pleading quality that made my skin crawl. "PTSD?" I laughed bitterly. "You have PTSD from torturing innocent people? What about Maria's children? What about their trauma from losing their mother to someone who was supposed to protect them?" My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the letter. I read the letter again, searching for any detail that might make this less horrific. Instead, I found worse revelations. Green was instrumental in developing new interrogation techniques that were later classified as torture by the International Criminal Court. He helped train other operatives in these methods. Conservative estimates suggest his unit was responsible for the deaths of at least 37 civilians. 37 people, I whispered. The chapel suddenly felt like a mausoleum, the flowers like memorial wreaths. 37 families destroyed by what you did. And you thought you could just marry me and pretend it never happened? Daniel stood up, desperation written across his features. Elena, you don't understand the pressure we were under. September 11th had just happened. The whole country was demanding results. My commanding officers assured us we were preventing future attacks. I thought I was saving lives. By taking them? I crumpled the letter in my fist. By torturing teachers and shopkeepers and God knows who else? Did any of your victims actually have useful information, Daniel? Or did you spend 18 months terrorizing innocents for nothing? The silence stretched between us, heavy with the weight of 37 corpses. Daniel's inability to answer told me everything I needed to know. He'd tortured and killed innocent people based on bad intelligence, following orders from superiors who were either incompetent or evil. My phone buzzed with a text from my maid of honor asking about final dress fittings. The normalcy of it, the assumption that tomorrow would proceed as planned, seemed obscene now. How could I walk down an aisle toward a man who'd walked down corridors to torture chambers? The wedding is off, I said, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. I'm calling everyone tonight. You need to leave my apartment and stay away from me while I figure out what to do with this information. I gestured toward the crumpled letter. Daniel's face crumpled. Elena, please, don't let what I did overseas destroy what we have. I'm not that person anymore. I haven't hurt anyone since I came back. I've dedicated my life to helping people through the law. Helping people? I stared at him in disbelief. You've been helping corporate clients avoid accountability for environmental damage and workplace safety violations. Your pro bono work doesn't erase 37 murders, Daniel. Nothing can erase that. I gathered my purse and car keys, desperate to escape the chapel that now felt contaminated by his presence. I need time to think. About us. About this letter. About what it means that you've been living a lie for 5 years. As I reached the door, Daniel called out, Elena, wait, there's something else you need to know about that letter. Colonel Whitmore didn't send it out of conscience. He's being investigated for his role in the same operations. This is his attempt to shift blame onto subordinates like me. I turned back slowly. Are you saying the letter is false? No, Daniel admitted. Everything in it is true. But Whitmore is trying to save himself by throwing people like me under the bus. He ordered those interrogations, Elena. He designed the techniques we used. Now that there's an investigation, he's painting us as rogue operatives who went too far. So you were just following orders. The oldest excuse in the book for atrocities. That doesn't make you less guilty, Daniel. It makes you complicit in a larger system of abuse. Elena, please. I walked out without another word, leaving him alone in the chapel surrounded by flowers meant to celebrate a love built on lies. The October air hit my face like a slap, cold and sharp and real in a way that nothing inside the chapel had been. My car wouldn't start immediately, the engine turning over sluggishly in the cooling evening. As I sat in the parking lot with shaking hands on the steering wheel, I thought about Maria's children. Were they still alive? Still grieving their mother 5 years later? Did they know their mother had died for nothing? Killed by people who claimed to be protecting freedom? My phone rang. My mother calling about wedding favors. I let it go to voicemail. Then my sister called about the rehearsal dinner. Then Daniel's mother, asking about transportation to the church. Each unanswered call felt like another weight added to my chest. I drove home in a daze, muscle memory navigating familiar streets while my mind reeled. Our apartment looked the same as when I'd left that morning. Wedding gifts stacked on the dining room table, my dress hanging in the bedroom, Daniel's suit pressed and waiting, evidence of a future that had just crumbled into dust. The first thing I did was pour a glass of wine with shaking hands. Then I called my sister Isabella, who answered on the second ring. Elena, perfect timing. I just picked up my bridesmaid dress from alterations, and it fits like a glove. Are you nervous about tomorrow? You sound weird. Izzy, I need you to sit down. I took a deep breath. The wedding is off. Daniel, there's something about his past. Something terrible. I can't marry him. The silence on the other end stretched for long seconds. Elena, what are you talking about? You're getting married in 3 days. The chapel is booked. The caterer is preparing food for 200 people. Aunt Maria flew in from Mexico City. Daniel was involved in torture during his military deployment. He killed innocent people, Izzy. Civilians, women, and children. The words sounded surreal coming out of my mouth. That's not possible. Daniel volunteers at the animal shelter. He brings flowers to his mother every Sunday. He cries at sad movies, Elena. You must be misunderstanding something. I read Isabella the letter word for word, including the details about Maria Santos and the 37 deaths. By the time I finished, my sister was crying. Oh my God, she whispered. Oh my God, Elena. What are you going to do? I don't know. I stared at my engagement ring, the diamond that had once seemed so beautiful now looking cold and empty. How do I cancel a wedding 3 days beforehand? How do I tell people why? How do I face mom and dad and explain that their future son-in-law is a war criminal? First, you take care of yourself, Isabella said firmly. I'm coming over right now. Don't make any major decisions until I get there. And Elena, you did the right thing calling off the wedding. I know it hurts now, but imagine finding this out after you were married. After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of my living room, surrounded by the detritus of a life I'd built with someone I'd never really known. The coffee table held books we'd chosen together. The walls displayed photos from trips we'd taken. Every object in the room felt tainted now, infected with the knowledge of what Daniel had done. I opened my laptop and began searching for information about Colonel James Whitmore and the operations mentioned in the letter. What I found made my stomach turn. Congressional hearings about systematic torture, investigations into war crimes, cover-ups that reached the highest levels of government. Daniel's unit wasn't an aberration. It was part of a coordinated program of brutality. Isabella arrived with Chinese takeout and a bottle of tequila, taking one look at my face before wrapping me in a fierce hug. "Talk to me," she said. "Tell me everything." I showed her the photograph, watched her face change as she studied Maria Santos's terrified expression. "She looks so young," Isabella whispered, "like she could have been one of my students." My sister taught high school Spanish and had always been the gentle one in our family. "Her children would be adults now," I said. "They've spent their entire lives growing up without their mother because Daniel and his unit tortured her to death based on false intelligence." We sat at my kitchen table picking at Kung Pao chicken, while I explained everything Daniel had told me about his deployment, the lies by omission, the years of deception. Isabella listened without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "The worst part is how calculated it was," I said finally. "He's been lying to me every single day for 2 years. When I asked about his military service, when I wondered about his nightmares, when I noticed how he flinched at loud noises, he had explanations ready, partial truths designed to make me stop asking questions." Isabella poured us each another shot of tequila. "The man you fell in love with doesn't exist, Elena. He was a carefully constructed character designed to hide a war criminal." My phone buzzed constantly throughout the evening. Vendors asking about final details, guests confirming attendance, Daniel himself calling repeatedly. I ignored all of them, not ready to face the logistics of canceling a wedding or the emotional manipulation I knew Daniel would attempt. Around midnight, Isabella helped me draft a mass email to our wedding guests. Due to unforeseen circumstances, the wedding of Elena Vasquez and Daniel Green on October 15th has been canceled. We sincerely apologize for any inconvenience and will be in touch regarding gifts and travel arrangements. Thank you for your understanding during this difficult time. Should we say more? Isabella asked. People are going to have questions. Let them wonder, I said bitterly. Better than explaining that my fiancé is a torturer and murderer who's been lying to me for years. We sent the email just after midnight, and my phone immediately exploded with calls and texts. I turned it off and went to bed, though sleep proved elusive. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Maria Santos's face, imagined her children waiting for a mother who would never come home. The next morning brought a pounding headache and the grim reality of unwinding a wedding 3 days before it was supposed to happen. Isabella had already called the chapel, the caterer, and the florist, explaining that there had been a family emergency requiring immediate cancellation. "The chapel is being understanding," she reported over coffee. "They're keeping your deposit but won't charge the full amount. The caterer is more difficult. They've already purchased ingredients for 200 people. The florist said she can try to resell the arrangements but can't make any promises." I calculated the financial damage. Thousands of dollars lost to cancellation fees, deposits forfeited, non-refundable expenses for a celebration that would never happen. "It's still cheaper than divorce," I said with dark humor. My parents called while I was showering, and Isabella fielded their questions with carefully vague answers about Daniel's past and my need for space. When I emerged, she handed me the phone. "Mom wants to talk to you directly." "Mija, what's happening?" My mother's voice carried the weight of confusion and concern. "Isabella won't tell me details, just that Daniel did something terrible. He seemed like such a good man, Elena. Are you sure you're not overreacting to something small?" "It's not small, Mom." I struggled to find words that would convey the magnitude without traumatizing my deeply Catholic mother. "Daniel was involved in violence during his military deployment. He hurt innocent people, killed them. He's been lying about it our entire relationship." The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, my mother spoke. "Ay, Dios mío. Elena, I'm coming over immediately. Don't make any decisions until your father and I get there." "Mom, I've already made the decision. The wedding is canceled. I can't marry someone who—" "We'll discuss it when I see you. Don't do anything rash." She hung up before I could argue further. Isabella grimaced. "She's not going to understand. None of them are. They'll think you're throwing away a good marriage over something that happened years ago."
"Let them think that." I was surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "I know the truth, and that's enough."
My parents arrived within the hour, my father looking bewildered while my mother clutched her rosary. They sat on my couch like they were visiting a crime scene, unsure what to touch or where to look. "Show us this letter," my father demanded. "Let us see what has you so upset that you're willing to destroy your future." I handed over the crumpled pages and photograph, watching their faces change as they absorbed the contents. My mother gasped when she saw the picture, crossing herself reflexively. My father's expression hardened with each paragraph he read. "This is serious," he said finally. "If these accusations are true, Daniel committed war crimes. But Elena, these are allegations from years ago. Has he given you any reason to believe he's dangerous now?" "He lied to me, Papa. Every day for 2 years he looked me in the eye and lied about who he really is. How can I trust him with my life when he's capable of that level of deception?" My mother spoke up, her voice trembling. "But everyone has secrets, Mija. Marriage is about forgiveness, about accepting your partner's flaws." "Torture isn't a flaw," I snapped. "Murder isn't a character quirk that I need to accept. Daniel participated in war crimes and then built his entire civilian life on lies." We argued for hours, my parents suggesting counseling, time apart, anything except permanent separation. They couldn't understand that this wasn't about forgiveness or second chances. It was about discovering that the man I'd planned to marry was fundamentally different from who I'd believed him to be. Isabella supported me throughout the arguments, adding her voice when my parents pushed too hard. Finally, exhausted and emotionally drained, they left with promises to call later, and warnings not to make any permanent mistakes. That afternoon, Daniel appeared at my door despite my explicit instructions to stay away. He looked haggard, unshaven, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. Elena, please. Just give me 5 minutes to explain. There's nothing to explain. I stood in the doorway, not inviting him inside. You tortured innocent people to death and then spent 2 years lying to me about it. What explanation could possibly make that acceptable? I was 23 years old, following direct orders from superior officers. I thought I was serving my country, protecting American lives. The intelligence seemed credible at the time. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. Maria Santos was 22 when you killed her. She had 2 children who needed their mother. Your age doesn't excuse anything. Daniel's face crumpled. Elena, I've lived with this guilt every day for 5 years. The nightmares, the panic attacks, the way I flinch at loud noises, it's because I know what I did was wrong. I've been trying to make amends through my work, through therapy, through building a life based on helping people instead of hurting them. You've been building a life based on lies, I corrected. Everything between us was founded on deception. How can I marry someone when I don't know who they really are? You do know me, Daniel pleaded. The man who brings you coffee every morning, who holds you during thunderstorms, who wanted to build a family with you. That's who I really am. The deployment was 18 months out of my entire life. 18 months when you tortured 37 people to death. I felt tears starting but forced them back. 18 months that define your character more than anything else you've ever done. Daniel stepped closer, and I instinctively moved backward. The fear in my reaction registered on his face, and he stopped abruptly. You're afraid of me, he said quietly. Elena, I would never hurt you. Never. How would I know that? I asked. You've been lying to me for 2 years. If you're capable of torturing innocent women, if you're capable of systematic deception, what else might you be capable of? We stared at each other across the threshold of my apartment, the space between us representing an unbridgeable chasm. This man I'd planned to promise my life to was now a stranger, someone whose capacity for violence and deception I couldn't measure or predict. I'm going to therapy, Daniel said desperately. I'm getting help. Dr. Reeves says I've made significant progress in processing the trauma and guilt. What about Maria's trauma? I asked. What about her children's trauma? Are you getting them help too, or just yourself? Daniel's silence was answer enough. He was focused on his own healing, his own redemption, while the victims of his actions remained abstract concepts rather than real people deserving of justice and reparation. I want you to leave, I said firmly. Don't call me. Don't come by my apartment. Don't try to contact me through friends or family. I need space to process this and figure out what to do next. What to do next? Daniel's voice took on a panicked edge. Elena, what are you thinking? You can't report this to authorities. It would destroy my career, my life. The deployment was classified, governed by different rules. Different rules that allowed torture and murder? I stared at him in disbelief. You're more concerned about protecting your career than acknowledging what you did to innocent people? That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. I stepped back inside and began closing the door. Goodbye, Daniel. Don't contact me again. I locked the door and leaned against it, listening to his footsteps retreating down the hallway. Only then did I allow myself to break down completely, sliding down the door until I was sitting on the floor, sobbing for the future I'd lost, and the man I'd never really known. Over the next few days, I struggled with the question Daniel had raised. What was I going to do with the information in Colonel Whitmore's letter? Was I obligated to report Daniel's crimes to authorities? Would it even matter after 5 years? Or would it simply destroy his current life without bringing justice to his victims? I began researching war crimes tribunals, truth and reconciliation commissions, and the ongoing investigations into torture programs. The legal landscape was complicated. Many operators had been granted immunity, classified operations were difficult to prosecute, and the political will for accountability seemed limited. Isabella found me one evening surrounded by printouts and legal documents, trying to understand my options. Elena, you look terrible. Have you eaten today? I couldn't remember. The days since the wedding cancellation had blurred together in a haze of research and agonizing over impossible moral choices. I don't know what to do, Izzy. If I report Daniel, it probably won't result in prosecution. The system is designed to protect people like him. But if I don't report him, I'm complicit in covering up war crimes. You're not responsible for Daniel's crimes or for fixing a broken justice system, Isabella said gently. Your only responsibility is to yourself and your own healing. But I couldn't let it go. Maria Santos's face haunted my dreams, along with the faces of 36 other victims whose names I didn't know. They deserved better than silence, better than complicity, better than being forgotten in service of my own comfort. I made an appointment with a lawyer who specialized in human rights cases, a woman named Carla Restrepo who had experience with war crimes documentation. Her office was small and cluttered, walls covered with photos from refugee camps and testimonials from survivors. What you have is valuable, she said after reviewing Whitmore's letter and additional documents I'd found. But you're right that prosecution is unlikely. The statute of limitations has passed for most charges, and the classified nature of the operations makes evidence gathering nearly impossible. So Daniel gets away with it? I felt fury building in my chest. 37 people died for nothing, and he faces no consequences? Carla studied me carefully. There are other forms of accountability besides criminal prosecution. Truth and reconciliation processes, public documentation, civil suits against contractors who profited from these programs. Your testimony could be part of a larger effort to acknowledge these crimes and prevent their repetition. She explained about ongoing efforts to document torture programs, survivor networks seeking acknowledgement, and congressional investigations that had been stalled by political considerations. My information could contribute to these efforts, even if it didn't result in Daniel's imprisonment. What would that mean for me personally? I asked. If I participate in these processes, it means your name might become public. Daniel and others implicated might retaliate legally or personally. It means reliving this trauma repeatedly as you provide testimony. It's not an easy path, Elena. I left Carla's office with more questions than answers, but clearer about my moral obligation. Whether or not Daniel faced criminal consequences, the truth about his actions deserved to be documented and acknowledged. That evening, I made a decision that surprised myself. I called Daniel. He answered immediately, hope evident in his voice. Elena? Thank God. I'm not calling to reconcile. I cut him off. I'm calling to tell you what I've decided to do with the information about your deployment. The silence on the other end stretched uncomfortably. What do you mean? I'm going to work with human rights lawyers to document what you did. Your actions, your unit's actions, the systematic nature of the torture program you participated in. It won't result in criminal charges. The system is designed to protect people like you, but it will be part of the historical record. Elena, you can't. Daniel's voice took on a desperate edge. Do you understand what that would do to my career? To my reputation? I have clients who trust me. A mother who's proud of me. Did Maria Santos have people who trusted her? I asked. Did she have children who were proud of her? You didn't consider their feelings when you tortured her to death. That was different. That was war. That was murder. My voice came out steady and cold, and now it's going to be documented as such. I hung up before he could respond, feeling something like peace for the first time since reading Whitmore's letter. I couldn't bring Maria Santos back or undo the trauma inflicted on 37 families, but I could ensure their stories were told and acknowledged. Over the following weeks, I worked with Carla and her team to prepare my testimony and organize the documentation. Daniel made several attempts to contact me, including showing up at my apartment and my workplace, but I maintained strict boundaries. My family struggled to understand my decision. They saw me throwing away a comfortable future to pursue what they considered ancient history. But Isabella supported me, and gradually, a few close friends came to understand the moral imperative I felt. The hardest part was testifying before the Congressional Subcommittee investigating torture programs. Sitting in a federal building, speaking into microphones while cameras recorded every word, describing Daniel's confession and the contents of Whitmore's letter felt surreal and necessary. Ms. Vasquez, one congressman asked, why do you believe we should revisit these difficult chapters from our nation's history? I thought about Maria Santos's children, now adults who had spent their lives without their mother. Because silence is complicity, I said. Because the victims deserve acknowledgement. Because unless we face the truth about what was done in our name, we risk repeating these horrors. Daniel's legal team tried to discredit my testimony, arguing that I was a scorned ex-fiancé seeking revenge. But the documentation was solid, corroborated by other sources, and impossible to dismiss. The congressional report, when it was finally released 6 months later, included Daniel's actions as part of a broader pattern of systematic abuse. He wasn't criminally prosecuted, but his legal career effectively ended when the report became public. Several of his corporate clients dropped him, and the Bar Association opened an investigation into his conduct. I found no satisfaction in his professional destruction. Justice for Maria Santos and the other victims would require more than one man's career ending. But it was a start, a crack in the wall of silence that had protected war criminals for too long. 2 years later, I received an unexpected letter from Iraq. Inside was a photo of 2 young adults standing beside a grave marker, their faces bearing a striking resemblance to the woman in Whitmore's photograph. The letter was brief. We are Maria Santos's children. Thank you for telling the truth about our mother's death. We finally know what happened to her. I kept their letter on my desk as a reminder that truth-telling, however painful, serves purposes larger than our individual comfort. Maria's children deserve to know how their mother died, and that her death had been acknowledged, even if justice remained elusive. The man I had planned to marry was gone, revealed as a construction of lies and omissions. But in his absence, I discovered something more valuable: the courage to choose truth over comfort, justice over convenience, and moral clarity over social expectations. 3 days before our wedding, my fiancé's secret had destroyed the future I'd planned, and in doing so, had given me a future I could actually live with.